Good morning, welcome. This is Champions for Change. We're going to get straight back to Champions for Change and the second half of our program today. We're going to be switching our focus now to clean energy. Here's a thought. I wonder how you feel about this. Is a transition to 100% renewables possible? Is it? Not much research into this topic. Before 2009, really not much about, but it has kind of increasingly gained attention and traction, particularly from people who are opposed to nuclear energy. And the majority of studies show that a global transition to 100% renewables is feasible and economically viable across all sectors. So what's stopping us? Let's just have a look at some of the excuses. Climate change denial, not too many of those still around who deny it, but if you do, then you need to give your head a wobble. Climate change delayers, there's more of those about at the moment. Fossil fuels lobby, political inaction, unsustainable energy consumption, outdated energy infrastructure as well, I'd probably say, and financial constraints. But here on this very island, there is a plan to go to 80% renewables by 2035. That's 13 years away. It's bold, but again, very achievable, and that's on Bermuda. So much for all of those excuses. We're going to dive a little bit deeper with our next guest. So please welcome on stage Head of Development at B Solar, Stratton, Hatfield, and Chairman of the Board at Greenrock, Eugene Dean. Please give him a big round of applause. Stratton, lovely to see you. Please take a seat, Eugene. Oh, Stratton, nip across to the next one. And Eugene, you're in the middle. Front and center. Great to have you with us, gents. We're gonna whistle through this next 20 minutes. We want to give them value and content. The lady has set the bar high, so let's try and match it. Okay, quick biog from you both. Just tell us, if people don't know about you and your work, just tell us a little bit about it. A little potted history. Stratton, you go.
Yeah, so my name's Stratton Hatfield. I'm the Director of Development at B Solar. I've been advocating for sustainability on the island for over a decade now. I hold a master's degree in sustainability, and I'm very passionate about community awareness and spreading education about the necessity for us to be moving towards a clean energy future.
Nice, okay. Eugene?
All right, greetings everyone. Eugene Dean's my name. I've always been into kind of like nature, natural living, environment, things of that nature. Always doing a lot of work around developing, raise awareness, working with young people, things of that nature. I think I connected with some members of Greenrock in 2007. You know, I got involved. I had a program, they got involved with that, and then they said, you know, actually you're doing a lot more work than a lot of our members, so you should join, you know. So anyway, today I'm the chairman of the board, and we've done a lot of marvelous work in the community. And so, yeah, so here we are today talking about renewable energy, which is really possible and attainable if we're intentional, as the ladies say.
Yeah. It's a theme that I'm sure we'll continue to kind of develop. And you also both mentioned the word community, which is also important. We'll come to that. Just a couple of little things. Stratton, what's the biggest myth or falsehood that you've heard about renewables? You know, what's the biggest fake news about renewables or clean energy?
Yeah, so I have to say one of the biggest falsehoods that seems to still be out there is that people think that it's too expensive and it's inaccessible. But the reality is the cost of renewable energy continues to decrease. And then the accessibility of it and the financing and the lending options that are available out there continue to improve. So not only is this going to provide a compelling return on investment and certainly reduce operating costs and increase the value of your property, it's also going to reduce your environmental footprint, which is a key driver of people deciding to invest in these sort of energy solutions.
Okay, so you've inverted that straight away. And Eugene, again, like sort of flipping the coin, what's the most sort of telling fact, you know, that you love when people sort of challenge you on this and say, well, actually, when you're talking about renewables or clean energy, any kind of stat or fact that you like trotting back, which is kind of like, yeah, this is why this is so good and you need to engage with this?
Well, the fuel is free.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. So in Bermuda alone, you know, what I understand is we spend in excess of $85 million a year on fuel. And with renewables, the fuel is free. So that's a telling fact. The other thing is that it's undeniable the environmental and the health issues that are caused by burning fossil fuels. And the only way to really get around that is to eliminate them. and renewable energy doesn't cause that. It doesn't have harms and impacts on our families and children and our health. So those are just two realities. So, in line with what you said at the beginning, I don't really know what the hold up is, to be honest with you. Yeah, because it seems obvious that the advantages are clear.
Yeah. And it seems that we're at the tipping point of the conversations where, we're at the fork in the road, right? We go left or we go right. Do we go into other options for fuels and energy, or do we go into renewables, like fully in? All the chips are in. And I think that, the more people that we can kind of convince on that path, the better. So are attitudes changing, Stratton? I mean, when you talk to people and you engage with the community, as you say, how are they responding to this?
Yeah, we're certainly starting to see all sorts of attitudes changing around renewable energy. The photo on the screens right here is a great example of that shift. This is the largest installation on a school in Bermuda. It's at Mount St. Agnes. And what this is representing is sustainable development at its core. From an economic perspective, the school will be saving money and reducing their operating costs. From an environmental perspective, they'll be helping to stop burn less fossil fuel, or more fossil fuel, I should say, and stop CO2 from entering the atmosphere. But then from a social perspective, and this is the key component of this is not only creating jobs and helping people have employment right now, but it's also inspiring young people to consider a career in renewable energy. We are going to be spending time educating the students at Mount St. Agnes to teach them about this project and to inspire them to consider a path in this sort of industry. So we certainly see mindsets changing, and we certainly see a lot more people having faith in this sort of technology and really moving towards this sort of project.
And you're absolutely right. I mean, the focus on young people, when you think about climate change, you think about this planet, when you think about how much we're heating towards that 1.5 threshold, potentially beyond, which is slightly distressing. You've got to think about who's going to be inheriting the planet from us. And, you've got the Greenrock Youth Council as well, who do great work in this space, Eugene. Tell us a little bit about how you do that, and also how you connect with young people. What works for you to really get them involved?
Right. Well, anyone who's a parent knows that, while we would like for our children to do what we say, they do what we do. So, our most, I guess, compelling characteristic for influence is our own example, So for us, we recognize that if we're doing good work in the community, then young people are inspired by that, and also respect is very critical, you know what I mean? So we've shown a lot of respect for the young environmental leaders in the island. That's really the purpose of the Greenrock Youth Council, is to connect environmental leaders throughout the island and help them to work together and share resources and support them, and in us supporting them, then they feel inspired to kind of work with us in the things that we're doing as well. So that's been the whole crux of it. But the key thing is our own example and the work that we're doing and the positions that we take and the examples that we set. So from me, for example, in going around to so many schools throughout the island, I mean, a lot of the young kids, they just call me the green man. So, oh, that's the Greenrock man, isn't it? I know you. You know what I mean? So, I can't, use single-use plastics. I cannot go to the grocery store and come up with a plastic bag. It just doesn't work like that. You know what I mean? I can't be seen with takeout and throwing away all. It just doesn't work.
It's the
I have to actually live it.
It's the pressures of being a superhero, you see. That's what it is. You're known as the Green Man. But also the way that you work together. Just talk to us a little bit about that, the collaboration. I mean, it's a really key part of sustainability anyway. None of us can solve this alone, full stop. B-Solar and Greenrock have worked together on the Bermuda Better Energy Plan. That ended up informing the integrated resource plan. Look, Stratton, you're better placed than me to talk about it, so can you just flesh that out for us?
Yeah, so at B-Solar, we were following the regulator and what their plans were for the integrated resource plan a few years ago now. And really what we were going to be locking ourselves into was 30 years of fossil fuel. And we didn't feel like this was acceptable. And so Greenrock, BEST, National Trust, BUEI, a variety of different nonprofit organizations came together to put together what was referred to as the Better Bermuda Energy Plan. And really what this was a catalyst for our community to be considering other options for us to be moving towards a clean energy future. And it really was the basis for what the plan is now. And it's a different variation of that, but it really is setting us forth towards targets and goals to be deploying clean renewable energy in Bermuda. And we did that in partnership with Greenrock, which was fantastic.
Yeah, what did Greenrock bring to the table here?
Well, with us, it was really like the public engagement and things of that nature. So we were holding all sorts of public forums and discussions and connecting people and working with government and things of that nature. So I really have to give hats off to the government here and also to the regulatory authority, because it was the first time in my life that I can remember that, you know, public policy was directly in alignment with public interest. It was a huge outcry from the community for renewable energy, you know, and the government and the RA came through with that. You know what I mean? To the point where it was almost like, did that actually happen?
Yeah. That's what you
know
call
what I mean?
impact, though, isn't it?
Yeah,
That's
so the
impact.
impact was real, you know what I mean? So, I mean, the RA, you know, was calling us and like, you know, you got all these people sending in the feedback. I mean, you know, they would normally get maybe like 30, 60, you know, 80 people responding when they do like go to the public for feedback. They had over 800 submissions that came in during that in 2018. So it is critical, and now we're embarked upon the next iteration of that, is that we're currently, again, working with UK experts on offshore wind, you know, to accelerate the deployment of renewable energy in Bermuda. So we're doing a lot of research, looking into the feasibility. Again, I was just on a meeting before I came here with the regulatory authority and the experts overseas, talking about the work that's already been done in Bermuda and how we can leverage that to kind of accelerate things going forward with renewable energy.
It's a really good point to mention. I don't know if you've seen this clip on social media. There's a TV program in the United Kingdom called Question Time. It's on the BBC. It's a kind of just a discussion program with a host and 4 guests who generally represent the kind of political spectrum, except they had a little bit of a different guest in their last episode. It was the 4-time Formula 1 world champion Sebastian Vettel, who has really stood for climate now. He's really stepping out, and he said the UK is sitting on this gold mine, which is wind, and they're just not aware. It's an embarrassment of riches, and they are at the fork. And it was a fascinating discussion. Again, you know, just shows how sport can really represent. It's got such a key role to play. And in fact, talking of collaboration and sport, we've got an impact project with SailGP Stratton involving the West End Sailboat Club. I mean, it's a historic boat club. Tell us what that's about and where we're at with this project as well.
Yeah, so B-Solar is really proud to be partnering with SailGP to deploy a local impact project at the West End Sailboat Club down in Somerset. And what this system is going to do is it's not only going to help reduce their environmental impact, but it's also going to help reduce their operating costs. And what this means is that they're going to be able to put some of this money back into other more impactful projects, such as teaching young Bermudians how to sail, and such as scholarship programs. So we're really excited about this partnership because it really is demonstrating sustainability at its core once again, and it's going to be having a great long-term impact for the West End Sailboat Club, and certainly be leaving a legacy for SailGP here in Bermuda as well.
Yeah, and it's about that. I mean, I think purpose is one thing. That's great. You've got to have the kind of intention to try and do something and make a positive change, but then it's actually getting on and doing it. I mean, you know, the famous quote from Nelson Mandela in 2000, the inaugural Laureate Sports Awards, is sport has the power to change the world, the way it talks to people, the way it, you know, offers hope where previously was despair. And I've always reflected on that quote going, you're absolutely right, Nelson, but let's see it, shall we? That's the kind of element I'm at now. It's like, you know, it's a potential power that can be harnessed. It absolutely has it, but we need to harness that. We need to make that purpose into impact. And what you've described is exactly that at that local level here in Bermuda. Let's just cycle back a bit, Eugene. I mean, of course, the wider context, as I alluded to before, as far as Bermuda is concerned on this, is it's an island nation. It suffers the effects of the climate crisis more than it contributes to it. How much hope do you generally hold out that the wealthier countries, the bigger polluters, are maybe just starting to get this? They have a responsibility, because they are the large polluters, to try and help an island nation like Bermuda out, and will do so in the future? Is there any movement on that?
Well, we see that things are changing positively. I would say I think it's a nice thought, you know what I mean? However, you know, I would focus on the things that we have control over, and that's what we do here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I know personally I have a principle like, you know, I don't tend to ask people to do things that I'm not prepared to do myself. So what are we doing? You know, and what example can we set? You know, Bermuda's a country, we've punched above our weight in a number of different things, and here's another example of how we can do that once again. You know, our situation is a lot more manageable than other places because we are smaller. You know, so let's set the example, you know, by doing it. you know. And again, the government has already made strides. I see, you know, some people are from the energy department and things of that nature, and the minister here, and we have our electric buses that's come in and things of that nature.
Yeah.
And there's movement around renewable energy with the government and things of that nature. So those are the important things that we have to focus on, and then we can say to the larger nations, you know, look what we're doing. What's your excuse?
Yeah.
Let's get on board. Let's be
it's it.
leaders
It's
in
an
this.
excuse.
You know,
Excuse,
rather than being dependent on people in a way that we have no control over the outcome.
So control the controllables is the first step.
That's the first
then,
step.
you know, prove concept, and then, put a little pressure. Let's see how they respond. It isn't just about climate change, though, is it, Stratton? I mean, we're talking about addressing a crisis like we did with COVID-19. And we are at this tipping point, and, you know, the likelihood is we're just going to have to live with this situation. How is Bermuda doing? How are we doing in terms of climate mitigation, climate adaptability?
Yeah, I have to say that the government is demonstrating some bold leadership with regards to focusing on achieving our renewable energy targets. Now, that's one thing to consider, but the reality is, as a small island nation, we do have to consider what sort of adaptability measures we're putting in place to deal with the inevitable of sea level rise and changing temperatures and stronger storms and hurricanes. So I'd say we still got some more work to do around that to really consider what sort of impact this is going to have on our key infrastructure and preparing for it ultimately.
Yeah. I mean, it goes back to the point I was mentioning about Sebastian Vettel, the Formula One driver. When he was at the Miami Grand Prix, he wore this T-shirt which said something like, "Welcome to the 2050 Miami Grand Prix, the first one underwater. Act now or swim later." I think kind of telling, because it is a reality. Sea levels are rising. There's no disputing this. But out of crisis comes opportunity, Stratton, and I think that Eugene, you kind of teed Stratton up for this. You know, how much of a leading role can Bermuda take? You know, you were saying, you know, you can focus on what's at home, keep your own house in order, but there's a real leadership opportunity even like in the region here, isn't there?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I see Bermuda as a beacon of hope for other small island nations to really consider what you can do to deploy clean renewable energy and to eliminate fossil fuel from your economy. And from our perspective, we really like to think of Bermuda as the ripple effect. So if we were able to put that first drop into the sea and it will to ripple out into other small island states, we could really demonstrate this bold leadership that other people need in order to follow suit and to achieve these sort of goals and ambitions that we have. So I definitely see Bermuda positioning itself to be one of those bold leaders in the global community, and definitely want you to think about, you know, what sort of role we can play as individuals to help create that larger ripple effect.
And there's that urgency, isn't it? It's you know, people trying to understand sustainability, but it's then, okay, let's get to action. We need to get to action. We know that this is the decade of action. There is that urgency there. So it's take that, not just a step, a concerted step. And that there are people around who can help you out with it. It's not like you're just on your own trying to figure it out. You know, you two are great exponents of that. So that's the power of the community, I suppose, as well.
Yeah, certainly. And I think there's another thing that's important to note is that we must act with urgency. This is not a let's wait game. This is a we must act now game. So I encourage you all to consider what sort of role you can play in acting with urgency right now.
I talk to a lot of football clubs in the UK. There are 4 in the Premier League who have sustainability strategies, who are part of the UN Sports for Climate Action framework. Essentially, it's basically football clubs saying, I'm going to be part of a group of people who will be held accountable to certain criteria, that they will really be, you know, reducing their own carbon footprint. But more than that, sports power is that it can talk to a lot of people. We're going to be advocating for promoting low carbon behaviours and talking to our audience about it. Those clubs are Liverpool, Southampton, Tottenham, and Liverpool, Southampton, Tottenham, and Arsenal. And there are 16 others, and they're not doing anything. And that, for me, means that actually there's the potential for growth. There is a real potential for these people to do something. I don't think, you know, it's about, as you say, kind of, you know, waiting. It's like, right, don't understand sustainability, you need to get on board with it, okay, but get going. And we can help you figure it out, but get going, get that kind of, you know, acceleration going. Just to you, Eugene, I'm just want to focus on something slightly different, so how interconnected all of this is, because, you know, energy, you know, you can look at it in terms of like sustainable development. It's not just an environmental concern, it's a social concern, it's an economic concern as well. Does that help, you know, make that argument even more compelling when you're talking to people about it? Because you phrase it in a different way, you frame it in a different way?
Yeah, well, our existence is all holistic, it's all connected. You know what I mean? And that's the challenge. A lot of times we try to separate things, but the whole, you know? And so these things do have a ripple effect because they have impact, in different ways. So a lot of things is about perspective, you know. So our mantra is changing mindsets, you know, because it's really like the way you look at things, you know, that is really key in all of this. And one of the concerns I have is that, you know, for the most part, we base everything around money. Is it feasible economically? You know, when the reality is that, you know, our existence like depends on these things. So what about like making decisions that are best interest of our existence, you know, and support life now and for future generations? What about that? And when we talk about cost, we're not really fully adding the total cost of burning fossil fuels unless you include all the health damages it causes or the property damage that it costs. I mean, we're partnering with a group called the Bermuda Clean Air Coalition. These are people who live around the power plants of Bermuda, you know, and it's like a horror show when you talk to them about their existence. Some people can't open their windows, you know, which means they have to pay for air conditioning to stay cool. They can't open their windows every day. People come out every day, it's rust, it's soot, it's stuff all over the cars, all over the property. You know what I mean? It's people dying in the community, and then the hospital's telling them that, did they smoke? And they're like, well, nobody smoked in the house. You know, so these are realities, but that's not factored in the cost of electricity. You see what I mean? But it is a cost that comes as a result of our production of electricity. Yeah. And that's what happens with environmental things across the board. You know, whether it's water in the ocean, trash in the ocean, I mean, or things of that nature, that's not factored into the profits the companies make. They don't pay for those things. Those costs are dumped on communities. You know what I mean? So we really have to look holistically about this. Yeah. This is not just about economics. It's a social thing, it's a health thing, it's environmental. And the thing is, we talk about saving the planet, but we need the planet. It doesn't need us. It doesn't need us.
Well, the planet will always heal once we're no longer here. It will cope just fine once we stop, you know, making a mess of it. I think one last little sort of sentiment. I think it's important to finish, you know, in this way. And you've talked about it before. You know, the positive, bold leadership shown by the Bermudian government, but also, you know, the ambition you have to lead in the region as well. Genuinely, what gives you hope that Bermuda can transition to clean energy, because it needs to do it, because it wants to show the rest of the world this is how you do it, and have that meaningful impact on the climate crisis? Just a final sort of sentiment from you both in that respect.
Well, for me, I trust in, you know, the work that we're doing. You know what I mean? People like Stratton, the guys at Solar, everybody in the community, all the environmental NGOs, you know, the work that we're doing with the RA and things of that nature. I trust in that because, again, for me, it's about action. You know what I mean? And we stepped into this place because we recognize that work's been done. It's great that we have targets set, but those targets were set like 3 years ago. You know what I mean? And so what are we doing about reaching those targets? Those targets are not going to reach themselves. You know, we actually have to do the work. So I have hope because more information is coming on, more people are becoming more conscientious and things of that nature. So, you know, I feel that we're in a positive space as it relates to it. There's a lot more work to do. But I feel like the needle is shifting more in the direction of us making the changes that we need to make. And it's no difference from the conversation that the women just had up here about inclusivity and things of that nature. Like, we're just having to become more and more conscientious, period. You know what I mean? And in that, all these other things, like, are just evolving naturally, you know? Anything
you want to tell this audience, Stratton? And I like the way that you speak, not just to me, but to them as well, both of you. As a kind of, you know, final call to action, if you like, because as I say, we're at a tipping point here, and you know, the people who can save this planet, some of them are in this room. So, anything that you'd like to add?
Yeah, I mean, one final thing that I'd like to say is certainly the youth is what gives me hope. When we go around and we educate students in assemblies and workshops about what we're doing, they're the ones that are being inspired to consider this as a career path, but also as something that's necessary. But in terms of final closing comments, you know, I have to say, like, be the change that you wish to see. What sort of impact do you want to have, and what sort of legacy do you want to leave for your children or your grandchildren? And it's as simple as that. So thank you.
Fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, Stratton, Hatfield, Eugene, Dean. Thank you very much indeed, gents. Well done.